who cannot make it today. All right, so today I am actually going to go through slightly about the SRQ, all right? Given that I think a lot of your teachers have gone through with you how to do source-based question, and I think you guys are not bad in terms of your source-based question, but I think the 15 marks of SRQ is something that we need to focus in these few weeks. You actually have 2 weeks left, and this week, your Monday and Tuesday is gone because there's no schooling, all right? Okay, so let's go through. Now, time allocation is very important. I think I went to every class last week. I went to 4E class, okay, last week, because I wanted to tell you about the time allocation. Now, for social studies, you actually only have 1 hour and 45 minutes, correct? And it is very important for you to really break down specifically your time. So I am advising you, in all honesty, take 10 minutes to read sources and unpack questions for both source-based question and SRQ. So it is really about that proper time management that you need, because if you don't do this, when you are doing, whether it is the taking perspective, which is the 10 marks, or even the SRQ, you will be so pressed for time, it is really wasted. So I know it is not a normal thing to do, and there is this sense of fear that, okay, everybody is starting to do, why am I not doing the paper? But actually, honestly, it is really that time spent, that 10 minutes just to look at all the sources that will really, really help you, okay? Now, another thing which I also shared with some of you is specifically for straightforward kind of questions, spend 10 minutes. You only need that amount of time, only 10 minutes, because there is no point in you actually doing so much time in spending for things like, inference, purpose of message. It is really a wasted effort, all right? So you really need to make sure that it's just 10 minutes, do or die in that kind of aspect, okay? And then moving on, things to do with cross-reference. This is the part where you really need to spend a bit more time because you are doing cross-reference, right? So spend time in surprise questions, spend time in utility questions, spend time in reliability questions. Even if you do one part, let's say either the surprise or not surprise, you are able to score, let's say 7 marks. And most of the time, this kind of question is 7 marks, right? You are able to actually at least minimally get within the 5 marks, okay, 4 to 5 marks, and that is quite decent already. Now, taking perspective, depending on how fast you are, 15 to 20 marks, and by right, you should push yourself not just to do 1 yes, 1 no, because 1 yes, 1 no will get you 5 marks, but 1 yes, 1 no also means that if you misinterpret one of the sources or you didn't link it good enough, you fall into 1 mark or you fall into 2 marks. So it is actually a waste. So you should really push yourself to do 2 yes, 2 no. And if you're doing 2 yes, 2 no, you should actually be doing it in 20 minutes. And that is the reason why I said you should always take that 10 minutes to actually read all the sources, okay? And today what we're going to unpack is really about the SRQ, and SRQ is actually 30 minutes flat. You cannot go more than 30 minutes because if not, it will jeopardize your source-based question, all right? Okay. Let's take a look at how we actually mark. I think all of you should already know this, but just going through very fast, okay? SRQ is something that you cannot skip, because if you skip, it's 15 marks, and 15 marks is still quite a bit of marks in the national exam, okay? So things that you just describe from the extracts, right? Question 6, you just tell me anything that you know, or you just vomit everything that you know, you get 1 mark. Okay, if you identify or you describe strategies, that means you identify it, right? It is 2 to 4 marks. And I'm very sure a lot of teachers have already said, okay, just focus on one strategy, right? So when we say identifying, right, it's just listing all valid strategies that makes common sense, and that will be enough already, okay? If you can give more than 2 strategies, 4 marks. 4 out of 7, it is already a pass, okay? Now, and when I say describe, it's really about examples. You need concrete examples, especially for question 6. Later on, when we look at 2020 paper, then you realize that, hey, what am I talking about? Okay. And in level 3, when we talk about explaining, is okay, based on the examples that you've given, based on the strategies, responses, or impact that you're given, how are you able to answer the question? Okay, so that is what you need to do, and that is what I feel is missing in your answers. Okay, all right, let's take a look at the next bit. 8 marks question. Okay, I think there was some questions. Should we describe the topic and strategy? Okay, I will answer all your questions at the end. Okay, so if you have any questions, can you please type it in the chat? I will answer it at the end so that our conversations or my presentation will not be, you know, a bit choppy or that kind of thing. Okay, now let's go back to the 8 marks question. 8 marks question again is about write the topic. Now, question 7 requires you to look at extracts, right? Later on, this is the part where I think you guys came today because you wanted to know how in that time limit, 30 minutes, how are you able to answer the question without technically studying, right? Okay, I think that was a lot of your issues that you had. Like, how is it I must go and study the entire SS textbook and just to get the A marks? Actually, no, it's really common sense and common logic. So these are the things that we're going to talk about today. Okay, and if you go and look at level, so again, same thing. Just by writing, just by even following certain things, right? When you are able to just talk about the extract itself, you identify the extracts, it's 1 to 2 marks. If you talk about describing with given examples, it is as good as 3 to 4 marks. I think that is the one that at least minimally baseline, you can get that 4 marks, okay? And then we talk about explaining, right? Explain how, again, always go to 1 factor or 2 factors, okay? 1 good factor is good enough. You get 5 to 6 already out of 8, all right? And explaining 2 factors is 6 to 7. Now, this is the one that a lot of students were asking me. Do we write conclusion? Should we write conclusion? In 30 minutes, you decide whether you're going to write conclusion. I'm not going to force you to write conclusion, but today I'm going to tell you how to write a balanced conclusion. What are the tricks? And actually, you can use this trick in your English or even maybe your mother tongue kind of essays to help you. Okay. All right. So how do you answer question 6? So first things first, you need a frame. Okay. You cannot go in blindsided when you are answering questions. That is really, really ridiculous, or that is really, really wrong. Okay, so when you write something, again, I think I'm very sure your friends or your teachers have already told you, specifically your teachers, right? Talk about either you can do the peel, okay, or either you can do the what, how, why method. Okay, that's fine. All right, what is always the point, how is always the examples, why is always the link. All right, but what is interesting, and I hope you have remembered, is you look at this circle of influence. I think same thing, I've heard of it when being done in English oral, right? You look at individual perspective, community perspective, and government perspective, okay? During the mid-year, a lot of you made the mistakes about Singaporeans, and then in Singaporeans, you actually talk about government initiative, and actually government is the easiest to do. All right, later on, I'll show you that little trick, that little picture where you can actually, there's actually a lot of examples to be used, okay? That's one. Secondly is, why is Singaporeans not government? Okay, so we see Singaporeans as very individual perspective, as well as community, very individual, community as an individual perspective, okay? Government, we don't see as Singaporeans, but if the question is, what can Singapore do? Then you can include individual, community, and government. So this is one thing that I want you to take note. There is actually a difference when we talk about Singaporean. I hope you can see it, as well as when we talk about Singapore. There is a difference. Singapore, you can include all perspective, individual, community, government, whereas Singaporeans, you just look at individual and community. Okay? Frame it. This is the one. This is the examples of circle of influence. So today, even if let's say you did not gain anything from this session, you must remember this. This is the most important part. You can take a screenshot or whatever it is. I will pass this deck of slides to your SS teacher. Okay, so when we look at individual, what are we looking at? If let's say you're coming up with a strategy, right? You are looking at what can you do to make the difference. So for example, if let's say I were to say, all right, how can Singapore take care of clean and green, right? Clean and green environment. So what can you do as an individual? What can you do to get your families to be involved? I think that is very, very important. Okay, so take note when we talk about individual, it is really about your actions that will make that difference. So community, I think the easiest and safest, I would say, is think of examples through your school experience. Okay, through CCE lessons, through CCA lessons, through VIA lessons. I'm very sure the entire Singapore kids taking O-level would actually specifically look at that. Okay, so that is why sometimes when you look at two strategies, right, you can even, if you know and if you have very good examples, change it a little bit. Don't just use schools or CCE lessons or CCA examples or VIA examples. Think of other ways that community can present, can actually come up with the strategy. So I think NGOs will be very interesting, especially if you're able to quote a specific NGO that answers the question. Okay, community centers, residential unit, residential centers. How do these three different agencies actually they are able to contribute or come up with strategies to answer your question? All right, government. So government is the easiest, and a lot of students love to use government examples. However, if you are doing two examples, remember, because in O-level, they ask for two strategies, right? Even though sometimes I know some of your teachers say, okay, just one strategy. But if you have time and you're able to push yourself, go ahead for two strategies. Government, if let's say you decide to say government, okay, government, they can only do two things. They can raise awareness. I think they are probably the strongest agency. When I say agency, the strongest body or strongest influencer to actually raise awareness, and they do it via a few ways. They do it via social media, influencers, public campaigns. They're the only ones who can do that. Public campaigns are not everyone else. The rest all must register. And the other one is really about how the government is able to come up with laws. And the laws here is either punitive, punishment, or fines. So the laws is, for example, let's say, how do you want to keep Singapore clean and green? Oh, it is through the government. How the government fine people who litter. That is, so this is the ways, or what we call the circle of influence. Again, for those of you who just came in, I was just telling your friends that out of all the most important things is you need to frame your mind. And if you're going to do circle of influence, that means what are the actions, what are the possible strategies, then you look at it in this way. Okay, individual, community, government, and in what aspect, so that when you are already, so that 10 minutes, right, of annotation, right, straight away in your mind, you would already have this. All right. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so how about question 7? All right, question 7 is the one that a bit tricky, because if you cannot, or if you don't read the extracts, will you actually get the marks? Actually, when you look at extracts are just examples for you to use to trigger. Okay, the word here is extracts is for you to trigger, literally to trigger. Why? Because you would already know the examples. You would already have some sort of knowledge already. But the idea here is, okay, what other examples can I use if, let's say, I'm stuck? Okay, what are the examples that I can remember based on the issue? So later on, we'll talk about it. All right. So again, the format is what, how, why. All right. Okay. So this is the 2020 SS paper, O-level. For those of you, please take a look at your 10-year series. Okay. So this is extract 1. This is obviously about plastic waste. Okay, so it is really about a clean green Singapore. Okay, so remember, extracts can be pictures, extract can be cartoon, extract can be anything. It can even be a diagram like this, or a mind map, a concept map of sorts. Okay, but you look at the year. Okay, so even though this was 2020, the information or the figures actually that they actually quoted was in 2016. So what I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of the time your papers are sort of backdated. Okay, a lot of the time your papers are backdated. Now extracts, oh sorry, it's a bit can't see, I think you can see it also, never mind. Okay, extracts are meant to trigger the knowledge that you have, and for 2020 is about recycling and plastic waste. So you can see that the main point here is not for you to quote any of this. You're not supposed to quote. I still have students, I think it's because maybe it's the subject matter or something like that, but I still have students who actually quote, you know, You don't need to quote, you're wasting your time actually. But what you need to know from here is, okay, the amount that is being recycled is very little, the amount is very little, and the amount not recycled is 93%. So that's why in the question, they actually ask you, extracts 1 shows that Singapore generates an increasing amount of plastic waste. So this has nothing, this is just to tell you, it is actually to frame your mind here. Frame the question. All right. What important message would you share with Singaporeans to help reduce the amount of plastic waste generated? And this is the reason why I wanted to do this session properly, is because it is about message. And for the first time ever, it was very different from 27, even specimen paper, all the way 2017 to 2019. It is really differently worded, because previously it was either, if you just flip your 10-year series, it's either strategies, responses, or impact, or even reasons. Okay, they even had like reasons, but never a message. So how do we approach such a question? Correct. For all you know, right, in national exam this year, it could be, oh, what important viewpoint, what important advice, what important what important other things. Okay, that is not a strategy or a response or impact. But if you look very carefully, what was the question? The question was to help reduce the amount of plastic waste generated. What message would it be? Okay, so first things first, you unpack what is message. And message here, it is really about who's the audience. And they already identified for you the audience, you know. What important message will you share with Singaporeans? So Singaporeans here, it would definitely be, you're talking about your individuals. You are talking about community. Okay, and what Singaporeans can do to help reduce the amount of plastic waste. Okay, all right. Now, message is actually, if you look very carefully, it can be seen in what strategies or solution you like to share. Okay, what are the examples that you like to share? So actually, even though this question is worded as message, we are still looking at strategies, responses, or impact. I repeat, one more time, even though the question is worded as what important messages, what important advice, what important viewpoint, it is still about answering the question. And answering the question means you must give me reason or strategies to help reduce the amount of plastic waste generated. There is no choice. That is what the question wants. And for what is the link? The link is what will be the outcome when the message is shared. This is the real link. Okay, now, I'm giving you a minute to just, a few seconds, to just read the box that is in blue. This is from the markers report. Okay, so they said last year's O-level markers actually said that last year's candidates actually deployed or employed various approaches for this answer, which is good, right? So how did they do it? They actually talk about relevant description and plans is one. They also gave some sort of background or context for the message. That means they gave something that they have done. Personal experiences does work. Okay, so personal examples, personal experiences. All right, and reflecting on the outcome or impact of the messages. That means, what is the outcome? What is the outcome when I say that the message is to tell Singaporeans that they should recycle? So what is the outcome of it? Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 examples or 2 answers, and you will see a different way. Now, message, right? Another thing that I was telling my students is message, it can be 2 things, right? It can be something that is, I encourage you. Message is, I'm trying to encourage the audience. You can write it somewhere. Okay. Another word is message is can also be a warning. I'm giving you a message. I'm giving you a warning. What will happen if we don't reduce the amount of plastic waste? I'm also giving you the encouragement. Oh, we should reduce the amount of plastic waste because. So I repeat, there are 2 ways of answering this, because if I were to unpack message as it is a form of response, then the response can be, it is to encourage people to reduce plastic waste, or it is to want people to reduce plastic waste. I think that is one of it. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. Okay. The first message, so these are the answers. The first message is that the plastic waste can be detrimental to our environment. So this is a warning. This is written as in the message is like a warning. Okay. And one of the real detriment to our environment is because of our limited land. Plaza Macau is filling up very, very fast. Okay, so when plastic bags and boxes are literally thrown out, they are burnt. And because of this, it causes a lot of greenhouse gases as well as carbon dioxide. Okay, and so what? So this is the link. The one that is in blue is the link. So when you have greenhouse gases as well as carbon dioxide, okay, what is the impact? The impact is it will affect our aquatic life. Okay, a lot of these sea creatures will be affected because they are either suffocated, they starve, or they drown. So this particular paragraph is written as a warning message. Okay, all right. So take note. There is also this style or this way of answering. All right, because I think they realized that when when in O-level they tested this particular kind of question, a lot of candidates were giving this like, okay, the message is to warn because it is so bad if you don't actually recycle your plastic waste. All right, don't worry about copying this part. You guys will be given the deck of slides. Okay, moving on. What is the second message? The second message is that all can play a part in reducing waste. So this part of the message is really about what are the possible strategies. It is very positive. It is very much encouraging. It is giving you the different solutions. Okay, and one of it is about the 3 R's. It's about reducing, reuse, as well as recycle. So the whole idea is the message here is, okay, to Singaporeans, please recycle. Okay, and I'm giving you examples of recycling. How many examples do you need to give? You can give just one example. One example would be, you know, like supermarkets are trying to reduce people from using plastic bags. Okay, they have those kind of policies. You can even talk about KFC where they don't give out any more straws. So I'm just giving you some examples here, but in the real national exam, as well as your O-level, you really just give one examples. Okay. Now, why? When every Singaporean is aware, it does help in terms of, okay, take a look at this, more conscious. All right, so this is the link. When people are more conscious, it will cut down the demand of plastic products. And because of that, plastic waste generator will drop. Okay, so the whole idea is, again, for this particular question, if I would just go back slightly again, it is really about the message can be both encouraging as well as warning. Okay, and the examples given is this is the warning kind of paragraph that's written, as well as the other one is this is the encouraging part. Okay, so there's 2 ways of actually writing your essay. All right, okay. But the most important is just answering the question. Okay, and always use the question stem. The second message is the first message is that kind of thing. So just take note of that. Okay, all right, now moving on, we'll go through extracts 2 as well as extracts 3. Okay, and okay, so this is the part about extracts, right? Now, first things first, obviously, you know that this is from issue 1, and a lot of you, I think your issue 1 understanding or your issue 1 memory is not there. Okay, so you sort of have to make sure that you sort of read up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to give you sort of like a few seconds to read this particular paragraph. For those of you with the paper, please read. Okay.
Different needs out there.
Correct. Different needs. Yes. That being yeah, I'm looking at your names and everything. Okay. Yeah, it's different needs, which is very, very important because this is a part where, what if I didn't study? Agree? What if like I really forget everything? And it can happen, right? Because I was like telling some of you, oh, what if you only studied or you only remembered things from issue 2? Because it's quite easy. Diversity, healthcare. Healthcare is the one that maybe some of you may forget. The Swedish healthcare, the American healthcare, the Singapore healthcare, or the terms for it. I think globalization is something which is easier. Okay, except maybe what do I think is hard for you? Maybe economic. Okay, maybe assimilation and integration, the terms you need, right? But for this, for issue 1, right, you really need to know, even if you cannot remember a lot of things, what you need to know is you need to know your examples, and you write based on your examples. Okay, so let's take the extracts 2. It is about different needs. So the whole idea is about different needs and interests. You have to, even if you don't know what it is, just guess. So what is the problem? The problem is it is a challenge. Okay, so that means it's something negative. It's not negative, but it is something that is hard for the government to sort of settle. All right. And then you just read some more. Remember, extracts are for you to bounce ideas. Extracts are there to give you clue. I don't think in any other exam papers they have this kind of obvious clue. So it's really about clues. And then you realize that, oh, due to these competing needs and interests, government needs to exercise careful consideration of decisions. What this actually means is that the government just needs to decide better. Weigh. The whole idea is about weighing. Weighing what? Weighing what they do, whether it's for the good of the people or whether it's only good for certain groups of people. So the example that they gave you was the Thomson East Coast MRT line. Okay, now I'm very honest with you, I cannot remember what is the Thomson East Coast MRT line about specifically, very specific examples. Okay, but I do remember other examples of different needs and interests. And if you recall, all this is in the NIMBY case studies. Correct? What's NIMBY? Not in my backyard case studies, right? And I know so many. Even if, let's say, I don't remember all of it, I remember about nursing home. Okay, my handwriting is horrible, but I'm just reading for you as well, okay? You remember about having foreign dormitory very near HDB, correct? You also remember about Cross Island Line. So my point is, if you do not know the example in this Thomson East Coast MRT line, you don't have to use that as an example. That is one. Second tip, if, for example, you don't know all the case study, all the examples, okay? The whole idea is, it is about challenge, right? So just choose one. So for example, I'm going to choose, for example, the foreign dorm. It's the easiest. It is a challenge. Why? Because people are unhappy about building foreign dorms very near housing estates or very near private housing estates, correct? And that causes a challenge. And as I said, that is the main idea, and that's the main example that you need. Just write a little bit more. You don't have to go into very specific details, but does it help if you have knowledge about Cross Island Line, about nursing home, about foreign dorm HDB? Of course it will help, right? But it is not do or die. Okay, now let's do extracts 3. Extracts 3 is about the whole idea. The government needs to create this sense of belonging. Okay, because that is one of the things that the government must do, right? The government must do a lot of things. One of it is to make sure that our basic needs are met. One of it is to make sure that they manage all these different needs, different wants of the people. The other one is, we just celebrated National Day, and the whole idea is about creating this sense of belonging towards Singaporeans. Agree? And the idea here is, how does the government do it? The government do it through various ways. Social media is one of it. So you can talk about social media, or you can talk about the Singapore conversation. And all these things are actually from your textbook. But if, let's say, you do not know what is the Singapore conversation, you may not know, right? We really may not know, or there's no time for you to really talk about it. Think of other ways. What are other ways that will create sense of belonging? So one of it is national service. The other one is how we celebrate, for example, National Day. Now, all these are supposed to create a sense of emotional attachment to Singapore. And that is what the government needs to do. Okay? So if you do not know Singapore conversation as an example, don't use. If you do not know about feedback channels such as social media, actually you know, right? The very fact that a lot of our ministers are using Instagram, are using Facebook to reach out to the people. Because why? Once I reach out to the people, I acknowledge their aspirations, or I acknowledge their unhappiness, it creates this sense of belonging. It means, oh yeah, my government is listening to me. So I must feel very appreciative towards the country, and I love the country. Because the problem that the government has right now is about Singaporeans who are able to move out of Singapore and survive because of globalization. Okay, now coming back to the question, if you extract 2, extract 3, both of them are challenges. And if you look at the question, which I'm going to show to you now, okay, the question is, do you agree that it is more challenging? The keyword here is more challenging. Always look out for keywords, okay? For a government to manage is competing needs. That means the needs of the people is so hard to meet. Or is it a sense of belonging? Which one is more challenging? Okay, now this is the third tip that I'm going to give you. There are a few ways of answering 8 marks question. I'm not sure whether your teachers have gone through, but I'll go through. Okay, so 2 ways. First way is from the get-go. I know your teachers have been saying, answer the question, answer the question, answer the question, right? Very true. Especially for source-based question, you must answer the question. But for question 7 in SRQ, you can do this way, you know, provided that I feel your argument and you are able to write well. I'll be very honest with you. Okay, at the end of the day, social studies is really about how well you write, how well you put your thought across in written words. Okay, so from the get-go, for the first paragraph, you really establish your argument. You say that I agree that managing competing needs and interests is more challenging than strengthening sense of belonging. You don't even need 2 paragraphs. Right? You just need 1 paragraph, and then after that you weigh. Okay, good and bad about this. You're answering the question very, very good. Okay, you are able to balance it out. But there's another way where you do your 2 factors or your 2 extracts separately. You don't combine it. You only write that conclusion part, which is more challenging, as a conclusion. So can you see? In the first method, you already answer the question from the get-go. The second method, you are answering the question in the 3rd paragraph, which sometimes you don't even get to do the paragraph because it's only 30 minutes of SRQ. Correct? So why? Okay, which is my favorite? I feel, in all honesty, this is a much more strategic way. Why? Because let's go back to the LOMs. The LOMs say, as long as you are able to explain one factor, which is approach 2, you're able to get 5 to 6 marks. You are able to explain with examples and answer the question. Answer the question means, is it a challenge? You don't tell me which is more challenging, you know. It is a challenge. Why? It is a challenge. Strengthening the sense of belonging is a challenge. Why? Okay, and you are able to write 2 good paragraphs with link, rather than you take the, okay, from the get-go, I'm just going to tell you which one is more challenging. Okay, and the reason why is because in case you're not able to elaborate on the factor, when you do approach 1, time is always of the essence. Okay, a conclusion you will only get that balanced conclusion marks if you are able to get level 3 plus conclusion marks plus the balance. So even if you balance but you never elaborate with examples, right, it is really actually no point. Okay, so let me just show you how it looks like. Okay, so it's about managing. All right, I decide to choose Cross Island Line because I totally do not know what is the Thomson East Coast Line. I cannot remember right now. Okay, but I chose Cross Island Line because I know the example. So again, writing your examples must be very, very important. You must write the correct examples. You must write examples that you can answer. Okay, and the examples does not need to be very extensive. The examples does not need to be very, very, very wordy, as long as you're able to write and make sense. So we're talking about managing or competing needs and interests, right? So we're talking about Cross Island Line. And the whole idea is Cross Island Line helps in the connectivity, helps in cutting down transport time by, 5 minutes. Even if you get the minutes wrong, doesn't matter. Okay, but what is the trade-off? Okay, so the trade-off is really about the impact on Singapore's wildlife and nature. Correct? So because of this, it is very hard for the government to manage this, because the nature groups who want something, the people who have to travel every day using a very bottleneck expressway would also want to reach to their destination faster. So it is really about managing, right? It's about balancing, right? So It is challenging. So you must tell me from this cross island line, why is it challenging? It is challenging because, all right, Singapore has very limited land. And because resources are finite, the government will not be able to satisfy everybody's needs. And because of that, all right, it may create unhappiness, and unhappiness will cause tension towards society. So this is a part. This is a part that you have to internalize. So the examples can be anything, specifically, as long as it's about competing needs and interests. So another one that I always like is about the building of casinos, right? Casinos are good. Casinos are economically strategic, right? You get jobs, we get the benefits of investments, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. But there is also a trade-off towards people who are gambling addicts, or people, families that unfortunately are broken up because of the gambling addiction. So this is a challenge. You cannot meet everybody's needs, okay? So again, the tip is your example doesn't have to come from the textbook. Your example can be something that you've read somewhere. So that is why from now all the way until literally your year end, right, you should actually read those kind of magazines that you have, okay, that talks about Singapore as a case study. It will always be Singapore as a case study. Let me just tell you, SRQ will always be a Singapore case study. Unless it's about healthcare, then you need to know a little bit about, Sweden, America, or for example, assimilation is a French. But you see, you need a Singapore case study, right? So please learn some examples about Singapore. I think that is very important. Okay, now going to the next paragraph. Strengthening sense of belonging is important, okay, because of this emotional attachment, right? People actually can just up and go, especially Singaporeans like you guys later on. But it is the emotional attachment. It means it's your family, your friends. So what's a common experience? If you cannot think of the Singapore conversation, what conversation? Every day I have conversation kind of thing, right? Forget it. You talk about how national service, that is one. How, for example, national service, it doesn't matter what skin color you are, what education you are, for example, you just put them all together. So that is an experience. But does the national service create this emotional attachment such that it creates a sense of belonging? Does singing the national anthem create that sense of emotional attachment to Singapore? Does celebrating National Day create that? Right? So these are examples that you can use. It can be, sorry, it can be any examples, all right? But why is this a challenge? Okay, so let's take a look at the one in blue, which is the link. Singaporeans may not choose to be part of this program. That means, not all Singaporeans go to national service. Not all Singaporeans actually get to enjoy NDP specifically when they give up free tickets, that kind of thing. Not all were involved in the Singapore conversation, right? And because of this, okay, they will feel that their voices and their feedback not heard. And because of that, they will feel emotionally displaced. The word here, or the keyword here, is emotionally displaced. Instead of being attached to Singapore, you are displaced. It means you don't care. There is lack of empathy. And because of that, community will be fragmented. And it does not create that emotional bond. So this is a very tricky 2020 SRQ, because you really, really need to actually do separately. So that is why my advice is you should always do one extract. Why is this challenging? Why is this challenging? Why is this beneficial? Why is this beneficial? Because if you were to merge everything, the problem is that your thought process, your examples might be jumped up. That is why I prefer one paragraph. So where is the balancing, right? The balancing is here. Balancing to get the 8th mark, which in all honesty, very, very rare we get, whether it is mid-year or whether it is actually prelim paper. It is actually very rare. Let me drink water first. Very rare. Okay, and the reason is because, look at this, you need to make sure that you get both aspects of level 3. Why would someone want to write all the way into 7 marks? Okay, maybe we have, okay? I'm not trying to stop you, but I'm trying to pull you back to the realities of doing SRQ. And let's be honest, 7 out of 8, very good already. Actually, what you should aim for 15 marks is if you can get 10 to 12 marks for SRQ, it's actually very good. Okay, sorry, 10 to 12 marks. Let's not aim for 15. No need to aim for 15. Agree? Okay. But I'm still going to teach you how to balance. And this is very important. Okay. First things first, you need to identify keywords. What do I mean by this? Keyword is really about the idea is more challenging. So that means in your conclusion, you must make sure that your writing is about more challenging. Meaning, what is the basis of comparison for challenging? Can it be not achieved, but can it be, should not be achieved, can it be solved easily? If it is a challenge, what is the long-term and short-term impact? So that means what I'm trying to tell you is when you write conclusion, especially for like argumentative essays or this kind of stating, taking perspective, not taking perspective, taking a one point of view, you need to weigh. And one way of weighing is to look at literally the short-term and long-term impact. Is it easily solved? Is it easily, does it require money? Okay, does it require resources? So time, money factor. So for example, if let's say we say about national service, does it require a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort? Okay, so you weigh. How come? If the government is able to manage either meeting the needs of the people or, for example, strengthening a sense of belonging, would the government, what is the bigger impact? Okay, does meeting the needs of everyone is more important, or is it we should make sure that everybody has a feels about Singapore, a sense of attachment to Singapore, right? So what is the big impact? Or can it be, give me a minute, can it be this? Can it be a balanced conclusion? Can we say, and to me, this is the best conclusion. If you have time, that means if you have 10 minutes left of source of SS paper in the exam, all right, try. Can it be a balanced conclusion? That means, because the question is asking, do you agree that it is more challenging, right? But instead of saying that, oh, one of it is more challenging, what you can do is, hey, both is a challenge. Both are equally challenging and there is no way to manage. I tell you, that will be a very interesting perspective. Okay, but this is based on the Marcus report. This is one of the ways, one of the students, last year's candidates, they actually wrote something like this. I agree it's more challenging for a government to manage the needs and interests of citizens. And the idea is, if I don't meet the needs of citizens, right, they will feel very unhappy. Disgruntled is actually unhappy. And when there is unhappiness, it will weaken their sense of belonging. So actually, the meeting the needs of citizens is more challenging, because if I don't do that, I will make people unhappy. And when people are unhappy, they don't love Singapore and sense of belonging is lesser. Okay, so this is one aspect of looking at it. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop share here first. I am going to see whether you guys have any questions. So far, no question. One question. Okay, let's take a 3 minutes break. Okay, and then let me stop share. Okay, we're doing a